Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the 107th episode of Real Hawk Talk. Except it's not Real Hawk Talk; it's Hawk Blogger Mornings. I'm so perplexed. There's so much on my mind. I can't even get things straight. Let's try that again. Welcome to the 107th episode of Hawk Blogger Mornings. I'm Brian Nemhauser. You can find me on Twitter and Instagram at Hawk Blogger. And this is a big day. This is a big day for a lot of reasons. I'll share that in a second. I will get to the main topic of the show here in a bit, but I've kind of told you about this. I told you about this when I started. I told you about it when I did the 100th episode of Hawk Blogger Mornings just last week, that I've been, I went to school, I went to college to be a sports writer. That's what I wanted to do. I ended up, for a lot of reasons, deciding not to do that, and loved all the stuff I've done in tech at Adobe and Propel and other places over the last, 26, 27 years, whatever it's been. And I've learned a lot. I've met great people. It's been a great experience for me. And when I left my last role in February, voluntarily, I really thought I would focus on some personal projects, some tech related projects, some product management related projects. And I thought that the Seahawks stuff would be secondary, tertiary, just something I kind of did on the side. But what's happened is a variety of things, but it's become really clear to me that where I'm getting energy right now, where I want to spend my time, and where I have the privilege to be able to choose to spend my time is right here. And so, literally 5 minutes ago, right before the show started, I sent a note. There's been a few companies that have been very generously reaching out, wanting me to come back and work in tech stuff, do consulting things. Really seem like really great opportunities with great people, and certainly better benefits than what I get for doing this financially. But um, I wrote an email dropping out. I wrote an email just saying my heart's not in it. That's not where I want to spend my time. What I want to do is kind of live what was a teenage dream to be a full-time, as much as close to full-time, sports journalist, sports writer, and now podcaster, YouTuber, all that kind of stuff. And I've been getting so much pleasure out of these conversations with you all, the community that we're building together, the conversations we're having. I'm infatuated with this new regime with Mike McDonald and the coaching staff. I am so excited about the new players with Byron Murphy and Devin Witherspoon, and the unknowns that we're going to find out together this season. And it feels like this has very much the potential to be another period of time like the 2010, 2011, 2012 period, where the Seahawks are really building towards something special, and that the rest of the league doesn't see it, and the rest of the league is ignoring them. And that whether it's individual players or the team in general or the coaching staff, that people, for various reasons, just don't see it with the Seahawks. And I think I do. And I think some of you do. And I think that's why we talk every single day. And the chance to actually spend my focused time during that climb and during a regular season. I've obviously been doing this during the absolute dead period of the football season. There's nothing happening right now at all. There's no one even in the offices right now. And I'm still enjoying having these conversations every day. If I can get pleasure out of what we're doing right now, and we're having hundreds, thousands, we have like 100,000 folks tuning into this over the course of any month. I can only imagine what it's going to feel like during the season when this starts coming together. There's so many conversations to have. We're going to break down every matchup. We're going to look at every player in every different way. We'll be able to have guests from all different walks of the NFL. I want to go hard at this. I want to give you all the best Seahawks coverage and conversations and community that you can find. I think that's my goal. I want to see how far we can push it. And I don't think I can do that. I know I can't do that if I'm doing tech stuff as well, because I don't like to do things halfway. And so at the end of the day, I have made what's a challenging decision, but really a exciting one. And so just really excited to tell you that I am going to be doing this the full year. And I don't know exactly what that'll look like. You will follow along with me. We'll find out what this means for me, what this means for all of you. And I know that there's been some questions about, people that are YouTube members and Patreon members and that have contributed, and that all the money's always gone to charity. And as of now, all the money is still going to go to charity. Looking forward to making, another big donation this year. I will have the conversation with you all completely transparently in the coming months when I figure out some ideas of how to at least cover some of my bills while doing this. But that's later. That's tomorrow's problem. Right now, this is a chance to just know and embrace that this is going to be a season unlike any other, at least for me. And for those of you that choose to join me on the ride. And I don't know, I'm going to reach out to some various outlets that I might be able to provide some freelance work for. Maybe talk to the Seahawks about getting credentialed and being able to attend practices. We'll see if, they're usually pretty resistant to anyone that's not standard media doing that. But yeah, I'm going to really go at this. We'll see where we go from here. So thanks to everybody in chat for the support. Thank you all for tuning in. And now, 7.5 minutes into the show, let's get into the topic of the day. There's just so many places I could go. I had a lot of ideas. I still haven't done the Boye Mafe one. I'll do that at some point. But the topic that kind of has been on my mind a little bit is any given NFL season, an NFL schedule, I should say, varies on just a handful of games and a handful of teams. Every single year, you look at a schedule and you're like, this one's going to be tough, right? This is going to be a tough one for the Seahawks, or this one's not going to be a tough one for the Seahawks. And then you get into the season and it's almost never the teams that you thought would be really tough that are tough, and vice versa. Let's look at last season for a second. Let me put this on screen here. This is the 2023 schedule for the Seahawks, and I'm going to blow it up a little bit so you guys can see just as I do, right? When the season started, I think we thought that Rams game was going to be a cakewalk, an absolute cakewalk. The Rams were a playoff team last year. Nobody would have predicted the Rams were a playoff team last year. Carolina, look at that. It's not as much of a high variance, but they did have the number 1 overall pick, Bryce Young. Didn't know how much of a jump they would make. That was expected to be a win, and it was. The Giants, the year before, people don't remember this, but Daniel Jones was actually pretty good. And Brian Dable and what was his name? The defensive coordinator for the Giants. It wasn't it, didn't they have the guy from Baltimore? I gotta look this up. Sorry, these things drive me nuts if I don't actually get the name clear. It was Wink Martindale. That's right. Yeah. They had been they'd been a playoff team or maybe close to it, but they were very much an up and coming team. And that was an absolute cakewalk, the easiest game of the season in New York on Monday Night Football. That was not a clear cut going into the season. That was not a clear cut win. The Bengals, Super Bowl contending team, Joe Burrow, franchise quarterback, top 3-4 quarterbacks in the NFL in Cincinnati. Would have thought that was a impossible game to win. The Seahawks absolutely should have won that game. Absolutely should have won that game. Cleveland. How many people knew before the season that the Cleveland Browns were going to be a team that beat the 49ers and had the best defense in the NFL and were a passable offense at times? They ended up being really good. The Ravens, I think we knew they were going to be good. I don't think we knew they were going to be that good. Going on through here, I mean, Pittsburgh, there was some variance, but the point being that you just know that there's going to be variance in any given season and that it's the unknown games. Forget the division for the most part. You know, the division games are always going to be tough. The Seahawks went 2-4 in the division last year. But it's these other games that you just don't know exactly what's going to happen that I think are really what make or break any given season. So as we look at the 2024 schedule for the Seahawks, I highlighted a few teams that to me have the highest variance that could be good, could be bad. And we won't know for sure until we get to those games. And I'm going to start. I've got five of these teams that stand out to me. I'm going to try my best to avoid the division. It might be that I come into the division, but for now, I'm going to try to avoid divisional games. The first one that jumps off the page to me is the Bears. Just about everybody has the Bears as a huge turnaround team. And if you look at the Bears from last season, I mean, there was a reason that they had the number 1 overall pick in the NFL last year. They were not good. They were not good. And if you look at their games last year, they got beat pretty badly in, a fair number of those contests. Let's see if I can go back and grab those. All right. So what you've got with the Bears is a defense that really came alive once Montez Sweat was traded from the Washington Commanders last half of the season. Was one of the best defenses in the NFL over that period of time. For the full year, they still were ranked 20th in points allowed and 12th in yards allowed. Their offense actually in some ways ranked better than their defense. Their offense was 18th in points for, so better than they allowed, they ranked more highly in points scored than they did in points allowed. They're 20th in yards. But, I mean, this is a team that got boat raced by the Packers in the first week of the season by almost 20 points. The Bucs beat them by 10 points. The Chiefs beat them 41-10. The Chargers beat them without Justin Herbert, I think, 30-13. But then as you go toward the latter part of the season, they ended up with Justin Fields as their quarterback. They won four of their last 6 games. And so now you add to that team Caleb Williams. You add to that team Keenan Allen. You add to that team Rome Odunze. And I still have some questions about what they've done. I think there's still some weaknesses on the defensive line. But this is a team that has the potential, depending on their mercurial quarterback, rookie quarterback, from being a below 500 team, a 5-win team. They could be a 5 or 6 win team. They were a 7-win team last year. I don't know if I really see them dropping below that. So maybe 7 wins is their floor. But this could also be a team that kind of jumps out of nowhere. This could be a 10-11 win team. So there's a pretty 4 or 5 game variance for this team. And when the Seahawks play them late in the year, the Seahawks play them in week 17, and it's going to be on Thursday Night Football, which is a tough setup to travel all the way to Chicago for a Thursday night game late in the year. But we're going to know by then what the Bears are. We'll also know what the Seahawks are. But that game is a high variance game when you've got that many rookies as huge determining factors. And great additional point here by Immortal EO Tech. Shane Waldron, you got to talk about him. We all know Shane Waldron. We know his faults, and we know how Mike McDonald embarrassed him last year. This is a team that could absolutely be one of the best in the NFC. Could also just be a mediocre team that the Seahawks, that could be a game that Seahawks really circle and think that they can get late in the year. So that's one. That is one. The second high variance team for me is the Atlanta Falcons. The Atlanta Falcons game in week 7 to me is going to be fascinating, because if you look at the Falcons from last year, the Falcons won 7 games last year with bad coaching, with Desmond Ridder and Taylor Heineke as their quarterback. This was a team that had a lot of skill players. You look at what they've got in Drake London, what they have in Bijan Robinson, what they have in Kyle Pitts. It's a pretty talented crew. Their offensive line is pretty talented. And then if you look at their defense, the defense was actually, we talked about it in the groups that had made the biggest jump year over year. I'm going to bring that back up. For folks that missed that show, the Falcons jumped 5 spots in points per game allowed, and they jumped 16 spots in yards per game. This was a team that allowed almost 700 yards less in 2023 than they had allowed in 2022. So the defense was getting right last year for the Falcons. And I want to kind of look a little more closely at that team in a second, because I honestly ignored the Falcons last year. I knew they weren't going to be good, so I didn't have to pay any attention to them. But 7 wins is not that much different than 9 wins, which is what the Seahawks had. And now you add Kirk Cousins, and the assumption is Kirk Cousins will come in. He will turn that team into at least a playoff team and maybe a true contender. They could be one of the top teams in the NFC. That is a possibility. I absolutely, if you asked me right now, would I take the Falcons or the Eagles? I might be the only one here, but I think the Falcons have higher upside potential than the Eagles do. I believe that Kirk Cousins, with those weapons, has the potential to do a lot of damage. But here's the thing. Kirk Cousins also didn't play for half of last year. He is aging. He could get hurt again. All those things are very possible. And then you're looking at Michael Penix Jr. potentially getting in there. I see Don Cornelius is not feeling my point of view on the Eagles. He says Saquon Barkley is on the Eagles now. Yeah, he is. I've got a pretty strong feeling that Jason Kelce retiring, Fletcher Cox retiring, that Eagles defense. I know Vic Fangio's there. I think the Eagles have a higher floor than the Falcons, but I don't think they have a higher ceiling. I think if everything goes right for the Falcons, this could be one of the better teams in the NFC. So the Falcons are the team that when the Seahawks play them, that's going to be week 7. It's in Atlanta. That is a high variance game. And it's early enough that the teams are still going to be kind of finding themselves. But, as of now, the odds are definitely against Seattle in that game. But this is a team that won 7 games, and to just assume that they're going to be world beaters, don't know. I think that's a relatively high variance game for Seattle. The third team that is a high variance team that could make or break the Seahawks season is the New York Jets. That's right. Mr. Aaron Rodgers, who played all of, 5 snaps or 7 snaps last year. That Jets team, the assumption is they're going to be one of the best teams in the AFC. They won 7 games last year with maybe the worst quarterback in the NFL and Zach Wilson taking most of their snaps. Trevor Siemian was a starter for them. Tim Boyle was a starter for them. But you're looking at a team with Breece Hall, who by some rankings, if you're looking at ESPN, second best running back in the NFL, according to them. You've also got an offensive line that I think has some decent variance to it, because you're talking about one of the oldest, if not the oldest, offensive lines out there, with Tyron Smith at left tackle. They signed John Simpson at guard, Morgan Moses at right tackle. You know, this is, I think, an offensive line that could see a fair amount of variance. They did draft Olu Fashanu in the first round, and I think that's a great get and a great backup for Tyron Smith, but it still would be a rookie. So you've got a team that's got maybe the best defense in the NFL. I think going into the season, you could easily make the case that the Jets defense is better than any defense. Don't talk to me about the 49ers. 49ers are not the best defense in the NFL anymore. They just aren't. You could talk about the Browns. You could talk about the Jets. There's a few other teams you could throw in, like the Ravens often always would get thrown in there, but I'm not sure I believe that given some of the losses that they've had, both coaching and player-wise. The Jets, for me, are maybe the most complete defense in the NFL. And if Aaron Rodgers, people say, oh, if he plays, they're great. If Aaron Rodgers plays, they're going to win at least 10 games. That I'm pretty sure of. But Aaron Rodgers was degrading 2 years ago. He now has had an Achilles injury. He still looked like he was not fully able to move around. He, missed their mandatory mini camp. What's to say that Aaron Rodgers at 41 years old, after a major injury, is going to be anywhere close to what he was a few years ago? And just as a case in point, I mean, his 2022 season was the lowest yards passing he had had since 2015. His touchdowns were as low as he had had for 5 years. His touchdown rate was as low as it had been for a number of years. And his interception rate, he threw more interceptions in 2022 than he had in any season but one, 2008. His first year as a starter. If you look at his passer rating, I mean, this is a guy that's lived as an efficient passer. His passer rating in 2022 was 91.1. That was the lowest of his career as a starter. And that was his last year in Green Bay 2 years ago when he was 39. He's now going to be back with an Achilles injury. I don't think the offensive line is what it was in Green Bay that he was behind. And we'll see. Can he be a Peyton Manning with the Broncos, where in that last year where they won a Super Bowl and Manning was just caretaking? Because I don't know that Aaron Rodgers can really lift a team significantly on his own at this point. I think he's got to be a guy that's just helping the team, not make a ton of bad mistakes and generally get them into the right place. But that is a high variance game for the Seahawks. That game comes in week 13. It's also an away game. All these are away games so far. The Bears game, the Falcons game, the Jets game. Again, the Jets last year won 7 games, and they did it with the 29th ranked offense in points scored, the 31st offense in yards per game. They still managed to be second in yards per game allowed on defense. So if you give that defense an offense that isn't the worst in the NFL or darn near close to it, that defense is going to be suffocating. And I think that's a pretty good bet regardless. But we'll see about that offense. We'll see. The assumption is Aaron Rodgers is going to absolutely be a huge lift. One, they have to assume that he's going to be there. Two, they have to assume that he's still good. And I would not assume that. And if Aaron Rodgers is not there, then you're talking about Tyrod Taylor, maybe Travis Jordan, the rookie. Like it gets bleak pretty fast if Aaron Rodgers is not the answer. Take a second here to welcome a new member to the channel. The Pit becomes a new YouTube member. It is so great. It's one of my happiest things when someone joins as a YouTube member or as a Patreon member. It's a new family member. So it is great to have new folks join. And as you see, when you join as a YouTube member, you get this little emblem next to your name. Your name is highlighted in all the comments in chat and on the videos. And so able to always find people. And now that I am planning to make this a more full-time focus, I'm hoping to figure out ways to really increase the community, maybe do some more IRL, get-togethers, all these kinds of things. So really, really appreciate the support. Thank you for doing it. If you are not a YouTube member or a Patreon member, I would love to see you join. I would love to see you become part of the community. And if short of that, give the show a like, click subscribe. Let's just keep helping. I really appreciate it. Show some gratitude for the work when you give the show a like, and it helps other people find it and keeps more people coming in. So let's make this a big growing group, and you guys can be a big part of that. So thank you to the Pit for joining. All right. So the Jets game for me, super high variance on what that's going to look like. That is 4. If you're keeping score, that's 4. We've done the Bears. We've done the Falcons. We have done the oh wait, is that only 3? I thought we did 4. The Bears, the Jets, which we just did, and the Falcons. Maybe I have only done 3. All right. Counting a new goal. I thought I'd done 4, but maybe not. All right. So the Jets, the Falcons, the Bears. That's all I've done. Okay. So the 4th on the list, and maybe the highest variance of them all. Do you have a guess of who it might be? Of the teams the Seahawks are playing, the highest variance from my perspective? It is the Buffalo Bills. Let's get the over-under on their season. The over-under is 10.5 for the Bills. I think that's a fascinating number. I would pummel the under on that. I haven't really seen their schedule, so maybe, the AFC East, with now you've got, like I said, the Jets are a high variance team. Then you've got the Dolphins that are very good. The Patriots, who are, we'll talk about them another time. But I think the Bills are a little bit in decline. And as much as I love Josh Allen, and he's not in decline, and he will keep that team good regardless, they just won 11 games last year. That was last year, and I think they were a better team last year. And so 10.5, I would have thought like 9.5, maybe. That makes it a little bit harder. I don't think this Bills team is a team that can threaten 13, 14 wins like they seem to be a team that could do in previous years. This was a team that was 6th in the NFL in scoring, 4th in points allowed. So 2 very good numbers. I'm not sure I see they lost. I mean, they lost some really key players. No matter what you think of Stephon Diggs or how he's doing in terms of his decline in his career, he's gone, and he was a big part of that team. As far as targets go, Stephon Diggs had 160 targets for that team last year. He's gone. Gabe Davis, their second highest targeted receiver, had 81 targets. He's gone. And while I'm a big fan of Khalil Shakir and think he is an up and comer, and I'm a big fan of Keon Coleman, and I think he'll do well, these are like huge departures for the Bills to try to overcome. Defensively, they lost some players on that list as well. Not that Tre'Davious White played a lot, but he's no longer with them. Am I right that Jordan Poyer left? Let me double check. Is that right? No, Jordan Poyer is still with the Bills. So I was wrong about that. But wait a second. No, he agrees to a 1-year contract with the Dolphins. That's what I thought. I was looking at an old thing about Poyer. Yeah, so Poyer signed with the Dolphins. So Jordan Poyer's gone. Tyrell Dodson gone. We'll find out how big of a deal that is. Obviously, they're excited to get Matt Milano back, but I think this Bills team, that is a home game. That's the first one of these high variance games that is going to be a home game. I don't think the Bills are going to be a pushover. As long as Josh Allen's healthy, as long as Josh Allen's playing, they'll be able to contend in any single game. But being able to predict how that game is going to turn out or how good that team is, how vulnerable that team is, I think that's a pretty hard guess right now. And I certainly would be under 10.5 on their win total. So that's the fourth. And I think I now have started counting properly. I got a nice super chat here from Gluten Taco. I love a good gluten taco. Says, love the news, all caps love. Time plus energy plus passion equals joy. Hey, I really, really appreciate it. Thank you. It is cool. It's a absolute gift to be able to make a decision like this and even consider making a decision like this. I do not know what it's going to feel like 6 months from now, a year from now. Who knows? But I just know that right now it's what I want to spend my time doing, and I'm going to take a big leap, and we'll see what comes through on the other side. So really appreciate the support. Thank you from Gluten Taco. All right. So that's 4. That's 4. Catching you up if you weren't here. The Bears, the Jets, the Falcons, and the Bills. So what's left? I don't think the Packers are a high variance team. I think that they're going to be good. I don't really think the Vikings are a high variance team. I think they're going to be bad. I don't believe in that Vikings team. That's one I could be wrong on. I mean, got a great coaching staff, got a really good offensive line. They've obviously got great weapons. They lost Danielle Hunter, though. I have questions about the quarterback position. And so I don't consider that a high variance team. I think the last team that I would put on this list, I'm staring at my options here because the real answer to this is a divisional team. The honest answer is a divisional team. So I'm just gonna go with. I tried to stay away from the division, but I'm gonna go with it. It's the Arizona Cardinals. You got 2 games against this crew. And last year, those games were not super simple. The Seahawks last year beat the Cardinals at home. They beat them 20-10, but in that game, they were facing not Kyler Murray. They were facing Joshua Dobbs, who maybe he's better, depending on how much you want to throw at Kyler Murray. But that was a 20-10 game. And then the Seahawks won a game at the end of the year that they really lost. And they only won 21-20. And you can say, well, yeah, the Cardinals suck. They're one of the worst franchises in the NFL, one of the most losing franchises in the NFL. They won 4 games last year. What's their over under? Arizona Cardinals over under 6.5 wins. That feels about right. Now, why is this a high variance game or team? Because as much as I don't believe in the Cardinals, I've talked to you about their defense. I think their defense, the front 7 is not good. I think the secondary has a lot of questions. I am not a Kyler Murray fan. I just don't believe in Kyler Murray as a Super Bowl level quarterback. I think he's not a great leader. I think he caves at key moments. I think he does not handle adversity well at all. I think he's a sulker. I think that I could go on and on. I do not believe in Kyler Murray. But they just drafted more rookies at a higher level in the draft than almost any team. And Marvin Harrison Jr., for most people, was the best overall prospect in this class. Yes, Caleb Williams certainly, but there's a number of people that thought Marvin Harrison Jr. was the cleanest overall prospect in this class. Could be an absolute game changer. What did Puka Nacua do for the Rams last year? You can't rule out that Marvin Harrison Jr. could have a season like that. You cannot rule out that Michael Wilson, who was a strong rookie receiver last year, will not take a big step forward in his second season, especially with Marvin Harrison Jr. taking some of the attention away. You can't rule out that James Conner, who was one of the best running backs in the NFL last year, who now has Trey Benson as a backup. As a backup to him, that's not going to be someone who a position that could have some real breakout potential. Trey Benson's a great run after catch guy out of the backfield, explosive back. And then you've got Trey McBride, who's one of the best up and coming tight ends. Could this offense look like the offense a few years ago where Kyler Murray got that Cardinals team off to like an 8-1 start or whatever it was? I don't think so. But is it out of the realm of possibilities? Is it like, is the variance just not there? I think that's the thing, is people want to just dismiss the Cardinals. And I do this as well for the most part. But there's a team that went in and beat the Eagles senseless. They put up 450 yards against the Eagles last year in Philadelphia. They put up 450 yards, 440 yards against the 49ers. 29 points against the 49ers. They rushed for 234 yards against the 49ers last year. They beat that Steelers team that the Seahawks lost to. They beat them 24-10. And they beat them in Pittsburgh. So, as much as we want to kind of joke about the Cardinals, and I still think of them as a JV team. This is a high variance group. If their rookies hit, and I'm not just talking about Marvin Harrison Jr. I'm talking about like guys like Max Melton. Let me pull up their draft class because it's a long list of names. I mean, Darius Robinson, their other first-round pick. Trey Benson, I mentioned. If Isaiah Adams, their third-round guard that they picked, if he's any good, if Tip Ryman, one of my favorite players in the draft, if he ends up being a really solid blocker and maybe an occasional receiver. Elijah Jones, another third-round player, quarterback. Dadrian Taylor Demerson, the safety. There's some names there that if those guys hit, the Cardinals could be a much better team than we expect in 2024. My guess is they won't be. But I'll tell you what, if the Cardinals are a very good team, and I'm talking very good means like they make a big leap. Let's say that they are a above 500 team next year. They go from 4 wins to 9 or 10 wins. It's going to make this division and this schedule much, much harder. If the Cardinals just make an incremental jump, which is kind of what I'm expecting, that they go from 4 wins to 6 wins, maybe 7 wins, it is a huge difference for the Seahawks this year. The Cardinals as like a 6-win team versus the Cardinals as a 10-win team absolutely shifts the power of this schedule. So those are my 5 high variance teams for the Seahawks this year. Again, the Bears, the Falcons, the Jets, the Bills, and the Cardinals. I will tell you, I considered the Denver Broncos, but I couldn't quite get myself there with their quarterback situation. But that was an 8-win team last year, and that's the first game of the season. And it's expected to be one of the easier games for the Seahawks. I'm not so sure how easy it's going to be, but we'll get into it because now I will start getting into very, very early previews of each game on the Seahawks schedule. We'll get to know these teams a little bit better and pay attention to how their training camps are evolving and pay attention to whether there's things that we should brace for coming into this season. But those are my high variance teams. I also thought a little bit about the Giants, to be honest, but I just can't get there. I just don't believe in the Giants. And I definitely don't believe in Daniel Jones. So I couldn't get there with them. But those are the teams I see as high variance in this season for the Seahawks. Tell me what you think. What do you think? Which teams do you think are going to be the ones on the Seahawks schedule that turn it from an easier schedule into a harder schedule? Where do you think there's teams that you think we're assuming we're going to win, but it could be a really tough game, or vice versa? I'd love to hear from you. Leave it in comments or in chat. Give the show a like and click subscribe to the channel if you haven't already done it. Folks, I'm Brian Nemhauser. I am here for the long haul with you. If you haven't heard at the beginning, I am going to be doing this and more throughout this coming NFL season, fully giving you, hopefully, the best coverage of the Seattle Seahawks out there for 2024. You guys are all a big part of it. Please join up in the community, subscribe to the channel, become a YouTube member or a Patreon member, patreon.com/hawkblogger. It is not too late to join as a Ring of Honor member for patreon.com/hawkblogger. We will be having a wonderful steak dinner the weekend before the first game of the season. And Ring of Honor members get a free steak dinner at Daniel's Broiler with me. Evan Hill will be there. We hope Josh Cashman will be there. We hope Jeff Simmons will be there. Maybe other folks will be there. So now is the time. Join as a Ring of Honor member. It is the biggest and best way that you can support what we're doing here. And really, really appreciate everybody that's supporting in any way they can. So take care, everybody. I'm Brian Nemhauser. This has been episode 107 of Hawk Blogger Mornings. Take care.